Okay, the streaming is live and we're recording.
Wonderful. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this open meeting of the Science and Engineering Policy Committee of the National Science Board.
Wait a minute, that can't be. How do we, these are things that.
I'm Maureen Kundick, the chair of the Committee on National S&E Policy, and Suresh Babu is our committee vice chair. Let's start by taking roll, and if anyone arrives late, if you can just put in the chat that you're here, we'll add you to the roll call. Suresh Babu.
Here.
Deborah Ball.
Sorry, I was muted. I'm here.
Wonderful. Aaron Dominguez. Suresh Garamella.
Here.
Dorota Brzezinski. Mel Huff. Matt Malkin. Julia Phillips.
Here.
Marvin Mateos Rodriguez.
Here.
And Beverly Watford.
Here.
Wonderful. Do we have any other NSB members on the phone today?
Alan's here.
Great. Welcome, Alan. So after my opening remarks.
Well, Maureen, I'm here as well. Sorry.
Oh, wonderful. Good. Thank you. So after my opening remarks, we're going to have two agenda items for today. A discussion of a high-level proposal of thematic report contents for the Indicators 2026 cycle, and a vote to release a draft policy brief on the skilled technical workforce. But before we start, I'd like to spend some time updating the committee with recent activities around the indicators release for our current cycle, the 2024 cycle. So since we've last met, several reports have come out. The Science and Technology Public Perceptions Awareness and Information Sources, Invention, Knowledge Transfer and Innovation, Production and Trade of Knowledge and Technology Intensive Industries, and of course the statutory deliverable to Congress and to the White House, the State of U.S. Science and Engineering. Alongside of that statistical summary report, NSB released a policy companion brief that SEP developed, entitled Talent is the Treasure. So emphasizing all of the concerns that we have and data that we have surrounding the development of science and engineering talent in this country. NSB also released our update set of the 51 state one-pagers, the summary page one-pagers that we hand out to all people who are interested in the contents of particular states, science and engineering enterprise. Refreshed this cycle with a heightened emphasis on data related to the skilled technical workforce. In the next month or so, we expect to release our two final thematic reports for the 2024 cycle, the STEM labor force of today and research and development, U.S. trends and international comparisons. So I'd like to sincerely thank all of the NSB reviewers, of course, the NCSES and the very committed authors and who've produced these reports, and the committee as a whole in the production and release of these reports. It's a major undertaking, as you all know, and you know it takes probably about several villages, maybe an entire country to put this out. So thank you so much. And I'll briefly touch on the rollout activities for the State of U.S. Science and Engineering Summary Report. The report was released on March 13th. And in the week since, Dan Reed and I, along with NCSES and the NSF, have had a flurry of rollout activities. We had a public release event at the White House, Office of Science and Technology Policy, OSTP, where we were joined by NSF Director Panch. There was a public briefing on Capitol Hill. There was a press briefing. An NSB hosted public webinar, which attracted nearly 500 people from government, industry, and academic sectors across the country. So very well attended, a really excellent way of getting the word out. And tailored briefings to the Innovation Policy Forum at the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, Capitol Hill staff, and the State Department. Last week, Vic joined Christina in a STEM workforce-focused briefing to the American Council of Engineering Companies. And ongoing engagement is planned for the months to come. The indicator's press coverage over recent weeks has been diverse and quite robust. Many outlets have focused their coverage on STEM talent data and on NSB messaging, which is good to hear. And I'm pleased to see that we've been shedding some light on this topic as one of our top priorities of the board and in this rollout specifically. You'll hear more detail about the rollout and press coverage at the NSB meeting next week as part of the External Engagements Committee's report out to the board. I have to say that it's been personally very rewarding to see the strong level of enthusiasm that has existed across diverse sectors of our constituency and users. I want to assure anybody who might have any lingering doubts, this is a widely anticipated report and it's widely used. And people are very, very grateful to be able to rely on the quality gold standard data that is represented in these reports. So we know it's a lot of work, but it also is actually a very welcome and widely used report. So thank you again. I'd like to pause to see if there are any comments or questions related to the Indicators 2024 cycle. Well, good. Glad to hear it.
But the OSTP event was very good. I really listened. Dan, that was very nice to hear Dan presenting the indicators. So.
Yes, I thought he did a fabulous job, and it was very, very helpful to have it in the context of the other information that was presented at that meeting. So before we dive into this meeting, there are two quick notes I'd like to make on policy efforts. First, all of you have received a draft of a brief that was developed by the SEP National Security Policy Team on the value of foreign-born talent for the U.S. enterprise and recommendations to attract and retain top talent from around the globe. I can assure you that this report has received a great deal of input and work and has been looked at by both myself and Suresh before we sent it out to all of you. But I'd really like you to take seriously any comments, or I want to assure you that we'll take seriously any comments or concerns that you have. Please email them to me and Suresh and copy to Amanda, ideally before the NSB meeting next week. I mean, given the gravity and the urgency of this topic, I know the author, principally Marvi, and all the other collaborators on the national security team would really welcome having this report move forward expediently. So please take an opportunity to have a look at that and email any comments that you have to the three of us. But I also want to thank Marvi for her leadership of this working group. And also I want to thank the other working group members, including Dorota, Julia, Suresh Babu, and Vic for your sustained and substantial contributions to this effort. So we'll hear from the SEP talent team, development team later in the meeting. The second point I'd like to make is that at our last committee meeting, SEP discussed the potential for a public comment to the Department of Labor's request for information on the STEM workforce as they consider Schedule A. The idea was to share NSB's perspective that the skilled technical workforce is in fact a part of the overall STEM workforce, and offering the indicators data to help understand the STW. So keep your eyes out for that draft comment over email very soon from Andrew Zeidel. So with that, we're going to turn to our next agenda item, the potential thematic reports of the Indicators 2026 cycle. So the last time the SEP committee met to discuss Indicators 2026, we identified 2 points for additional discussion. More detailed insight into the potential contents of the thematic reports that are being proposed and considered. One on talent, one on discovery, and one on either translation or maybe perhaps more broadly societal impact. How does basic research translate into products that are used broadly by beyond the scientific community? Secondly, a need to engage stakeholders before committing to any major changes of the indicators process. So I'll offer a bit of broader context, particularly around stakeholder engagement the SEP has recently conducted. We've been speaking with the staff at the White House and in Congress, as well as with leaders of the S&E community nationwide. The goal of these sessions was to present sort of a broad overarching vision of the 3 new thematic umbrella report topics our vision of the new data dashboard, which will be a major interface for our users to access data and analysis. And the fact that condensing from 9 reports to 3 reports will open up bandwidth for NCSCS and the NSB to produce new special topic targeted data releases. So 2-pager short reports on new data sets or on emerging topics of interest in the SEP community. So to hear whether this proposed suite of products resonated with key audiences, before I proceed further, I want to emphasize that the stakeholder engagement is planned to continue as 2026 products begin to be developed. And a written summary of the stakeholder engagement will be provided to the NSB next week. I'm pleased to share that overall, the conversations have been really just exceptionally positive. Stakeholders have agreed that there's room for increased utility in the indicator suite of products. They've described the 3 report themes as covering the information they would look for and as really appealing because it reduces confusion about where to find the information that they're interested in, becomes more user-friendly to people who are focusing on specific topics. We've heard a great deal of enthusiasm for the new proposed quick turnaround releases on special topics, including concrete ideas for what the content of those reports might look like, such as the skilled technical workforce or biomanufacturing. At the same time, these conversations echoed points of focus that we have had as a committee, the importance of carefully considering which topics and which data are included in the thematic reports versus accessible online in a more timely and regularly updated manner. The need to ensure that the new data dashboard is done well and delivers on the goals of user accessibility. The value of preserving trends for key indicators, even if they're not included in the new thematic reports. And lastly, the importance of, via the dashboard and via any other mechanisms we can think of, maintaining ongoing stakeholder engagement and feedback. So being able to refine this as we move forward, through perhaps metrics from web dashboard usage, what products are being accessed, what products are proving to be the most helpful to our constituents, as well as direct feedback from users. So Suresh, Bev, Julia, Matt, you joined some of these conversations as well. Is there anything else you'd like to add about feedback from the stakeholders that we've received so far?
Thank you, Maureen. There's a lot of feedback. I took notes. I think those are going to be summarized. It'll be in the diligent board. But some of the key ones on the thematic reports, some instead of translation, why don't you make it as an impact? And then another one was related to timely reports to come out. And for example, we pointed out skilled workforce and biomanufacturing. And then there were a lot of enthusiastic support to make it data available, but make it easier to use, both expert and novice type approach to go get the data. And some of them want to go get all the original data. Some of them want easy to use also. That was very nice to see that. And there were some feedbacks about that just finished meetings is related to make reports similar to GAO also. So all this will be summarized in the diligent board that's by the time NSB meeting comes up.
Yeah, I think I would only add that one of the major comments that I heard was a concern about not losing the expertise of our colleagues at NCSCS. So not simply seeing the dashboard as sort of a data dump and everybody has to recreate the wheel and think about what the most appropriate analysis would be and how does one statistically evaluate the data for a particular purpose. I think that's a really important concern and it certainly is part of our thinking moving forward. As well as making the raw data available to people who might just want to use it however it is they see fit. Other thoughts or comments? All right, then. Today's discussion is focused on the potential contents of the new thematic reports. And you can find a high-level draft outline from NCSCS in your SEP committee diligent books. Of course, the new dashboard and specific topic releases are relevant to the discussion, but I'd like to stay focused on the thematic reports as for the topic at hand. Also, I want to be clear about today's goal. So to discuss whether we still find these 3 umbrella topics impactful and appropriate, whether the proposed outline demonstrates that clustering of the indicators data and narratives together in this way is actually feasible, and whether it's value added, whether this is actually going to improve the usability of these reports for the people who rely on them. So the thematic report high-level outlines are intended to demonstrate feasibility and areas of opportunity, and they are pre-decisional. So we all, as the board, are going to make a decision if this is how we want to move forward. Right now, we're trying to provide enough information so that people can make an informed and well-considered decision. So if SEP and NSB moves forward with the proposed vision for Indicators 2026, SEP guidance of report development would more formally begin with a detailed narrative outline review and other usual NSB touch points on the reports, plus an additional early review of the initial reports drafted, both by myself, by whoever is the NSB chair or SEP chair and vice chair during the next cycle. So it's important to appreciate that the process that we're all familiar with is going to be preserved for reviewing how these potential new reports move forward. But I'm also going to emphasize that although we've always stressed the importance of input at the detailed narrative outline stage, I think for the next cycle, this would be really, really critically important to get people to think and spend some brain cycles on, is this going to work? Is this going to be what we want to put forward as the first instantiation of this new approach? What's missing? What's too much? Really think critically about how these condensed reports are going to be structured. So at the same time, it's valuable both for the committee and for NCSDS to hear your broader thoughts on this outline of how we might potentially move forward in 2026, since that feedback will contribute to further developments of the reports. So I would suggest that we start with a more narrow topic of high-level feasibility and utility, and then broaden our discussion from there. So before we jump in, Christina, I'd like to turn to you for some framing from the NCSDS.
Thank you, Maureen, and thank you so much for your time leading this committee. So I do want to recognize that. So we really greatly appreciated all your input and leadership during this cycle in 2024. So I'm here today. Amanda shared the memo. I think it's in the Diligent book, but I'm just going to present kind of high level at the memo, just in case you didn't get a chance to read it, or in case you have any questions. So I'll go through about 3 slides here and we'll open it up for questions. So really I'm going to start with the potential outline, that high level pre-decisional, as Maureen highlighted, is highlighted in the memo. These are the potential outlines that we're thinking about the 3 reports. And so the first report is discovery. So that's global and US R&D, basically. It's R&D sector, it's US sectors. So looking at the business, government, higher education, all the different sectors that we collect data on and that are important for our ecosystem, but also really trying to delve into some real policy relevant new topics, such as the CHIPS and Science Act and the investments that were legislatively mandated or requested in that, and where we have data on that. So that's really always our policy relevant. When we do any new cycle of indicators, we always stop and say, during that detailed narrative outline stage that Maureen mentioned, what is the most policy relevant topics right now, and what is the best data we have available? So also in discovery, we'll go, as usual, into international comparisons. This really draws on OECD data. It's our best data. So the first section, US sectors R&D, that's NCSDS data. The international comparisons really relies on OECD data, which we work closely with to make sure that we have that comparison across countries. So we can look at other large performers. That's the best data available. That's high quality. It's the Organization for Economic Development statistical data. And then we're going to do research publications in this first discovery. There's a little bit of debate where we've had it in the summary report in the past and versus where we have it now. Our thinking now is it really kind of fits in to the discovery thematic report as it's describes what has been discovered. And so that's our usual publication output, highly cited articles, looking at international comparison. This is a bibliometric database. It's administrative data. It does take a little bit to complete. It's a little bit of a lagging indicator, but it does allow us to look at things such as emerging technologies, well, more like critical technologies. It's kind of hard to do sometimes emerging technologies because we don't know what they are right away. But critical technologies such as what the White House just recently updated their list, and it allows us to look at county data. We will keep publishing the county data for sure as part of the data tool. So for the next thematic report, it would be talent. And this really focuses on STEM education and workforce. There's a little more detail in the memo, but I tried to fit it all on one slide. So looking at K-12 education, post-secondary, so both undergraduate and graduate, but also expanding into licenses and certificates. And this really tries to get to that skilled technical workforce piece. Those that we're trying to measure, what is the pipeline into that skilled technical workforce? It's not as easy to measure as, even though it's an imperfect measure, as engineering degrees as a pipeline into the engineering workforce. Imperfect measure, but still an indicator. So we're trying to really get to how do we have some high quality statistical data on the pipeline into the skilled technical workforce. And because we are, as I say, reshaping our approach, our mode of communication, as Maureen mentioned, it does allow us to explore some new topics that we haven't in the past. And one thing we've heard from stakeholders, from Vic and I heard it last week when we were talking to that group, and from everyone, is attrition. And of course, it's hard. If it was easy, we wouldn't have to do it, but we do hope to be able to identify some high quality indicators related to attrition from some of our sister statistical agencies. So that would be new for 2026. And that's an example of what the flexibility buys us. And then, of course, we would not forget workforce, all sorts of different indicators on workforce. These are just very high quality. So the STEM workforce, of course, by demographics, by educational attainment, of course, then by geography. Everyone is always interested in geography, getting down as low as we can go. Some states, some of our data sources are less than state, but while also keeping the thematic report at a high level. And then as we can, bringing in those Bureau of Labor Statistics workforce projections, because that people always want to know those. I think that's a very popular indicator that we publish. And then finally, translation, or whatever we decide together to call it. I think it's a little bit under debate, but really focuses on the US and global science, technology, and innovation indicators. The mappings to the different reports are on the next slide, probably. So having, our innovation and technology transfer indicators, those are our patents, those are our patent applications, so patents awarded, patent applications, and trademarks. Looking at patent citations, so how do we see the academic research or just research in general being cited in patents, and then moving on into the knowledge and technology intensive industries, output and trade. And so that's looking at the value added of these industries, especially these KTI industries, looking at the international comparisons of the value added industries, looking at US and global gross trades goods, and that's really looking at how much value we're adding. And then we'll close with OECD trade and value added. So these are all important indicators that indicate how this knowledge is being translated into the marketplace. So we see money changing hands or goods changing hands that have these components. So in your in the memo, in the diligent book, you can see that this is the proposed crosswalk. It follows kind of exactly what I said. Pretty straightforward. And then finally, the timelines. So we've talked about these timelines before. It's really that we have to start planning now for that discovery, because looking at data availability and when we really want to start space out our reports and get everything out before the summary report, we would want to start publishing in June 2025, which means this takes at least a year. So we would really start talking about that annotated out, detailed narrative outline now. Well, June now, though feels like summer is rushing toward us, but we do want to make sure that we have lots and lots of time, because I'll just echo what Maureen said, that we have, this is the time to get the input, especially as we're making these changes. This is the time in which we have the most flexibility to incorporate board members' input. So thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Christina. So as chair, I'm going to start by just briefly giving my view of the overall feasibility of shifting to 3 reports. And then I'll ask our vice chair, Suresh, to add any comments he might have, and then we'll follow the hands that are up and get input from the board. So just very briefly, I want to clearly endorse, I spent a lot of time looking at the crosswalks and about how these reports how the content would map to these 3 reports. And I think it's very feasible. Both from my own view and from the input we've had from our listening sessions, I think definitely decisions will need to be made about what topics the indicators will continue to present in order to remain policy relevant, and which ones we do not need to specifically call out in the actual published reports. Streamlining the TRs for maximum utility and readability means that not all the indicators are going to continue to be present. They may shift mode into the dashboard instead. And this does present an opportunity for greater timeliness of some of the indicators. So we can highlight data as it becomes available, not simply when the report has to roll out, given the production guidelines. And lastly, I think, as I've emphasized before, I want to emphasize again that the next board cycle's input at the early stages of the thematic reports and developments will really prove to be critical for the success or failure of this re-envisioning approach. So Suresh?
Oh, so Maureen, thank you. I just a brief comment. I think I looked at the mapping of the previous reports to the 3 reports, and it addresses many of the worries people had, like the data will not be lost, data will be still there. They can use a time series analysis to look at how things evolve. So it's good we are not losing, but we are only making it concise and making people to easy read and everything. So that's the only comment, and it aligns with many of our stakeholders who showed up for listening from us.
Okay. So Marvi?
Hi, so everyone, so first of all, I mean, great inputs on each of the reports. I really like the organization, and it's very, I don't know, it's like very intentional. You can see the flow and so on. So I'm very happy about that. I have a few questions on each of the columns, which you guys can take in different ways, maybe as inputs or feedback. But in the first column of discovery, I saw basically inputs from business, R&D, from academic R&D, basically. And then something that might be missing might be national labs R&D. So I'm thinking like, okay, what are we missing, right? Like of the enterprise of R&D. So national labs might be missing there. I don't know how big it is, but it might be significant, right? So then on the citations, so I believe it's in discovery, but also in translation, there's a mention to citations of papers. And I'm thinking like, are there other quality metrics for papers that we could use that are more modern? And a way to think about this is not just like direct citations, but the networks that are created of citations after first paper is cited. What I mean by that is these, analytics ecosystems of like how papers are impactful might not be like a first order citation. It might be a second or third order citation. It's not that paper, but that paper actually sparks something that, went into 10 papers. Those 10 papers became 1,000 papers, right? And so those networks might be something to consider as maybe more modern metrics of quality. Then in the workforce projections, I was thinking, are these referring to demand? I'm not sure what workforce projections really mean. So maybe some clarification there might be useful. And then finally, on the translation, I think we're also, I'm not sure, we might be missing spin-offs and startups as a metric of innovation. And we know where those, hubs are within the US and how important they are to the impact, to the economic impact across very hot fields. So those are my kind of 4 comments. So it's not necessarily, I need an answer now by any means. It's just more like feedback on those 3 columns.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Marvi. Those are all great thoughts and suggestions. I would like to focus our discussion now on kind of feasibility question, that we really need to decide as a committee whether we want to bring this proposal forward to the full board as a vote, because as you saw from Christina's sort of timeline sketch, that is, if we're going to go this way, we're going to have to make a decision to do it pretty soon. Otherwise, we're going to have to get started also pretty soon on 2026 9 thematic reports, business as usual. So Suresh Garamala.
Yeah, thanks, Maureen. I just want to start by saying chairing this committee is not easy. And so Maureen, you and Suresh have done a fantastic job. I know Julia did that forever and did a fantastic job, but taking it over, really, really well done. And I know it's all volunteer stuff and you don't hear that often. I'm very much in favor of this. I think we have to be very careful for the very traditional users, the folks who feel very strongly about the content of it. I mean, I think of Artie Bienenstock, but many others. And there's a lot of sort of light users to whom it doesn't matter anyway. It is those traditional heavy users to which for which this is very important. And so I like the crosswalk table very much. And so the more we can do to enhance that, to make it visible, to make it a big part of the introductory sort of part of the web page and such, maybe even saying, chapters 7.3 and 7.4 mapped, whatever, right? I'm just saying the more time we spend there, the less heartache there'll be. So to your question, I'm certainly supportive of this. And because I unmuted, I'll just say the one area that seemed a little, well, it's a descriptor, one bullet on a slide that's very busy, but the international student stuff under STEM is, it's half of the challenge, right? So we've STEM workforce that is domestic. We're talking about the missing millions, et cetera. But then the international one, especially in some fields, is huge. And so I think we want to sort of do more than a bullet's worth of justice to that. There's many aspects to it. I'm currently serving on a National Academies study on talent programs. They're doing a really good job. We should have a report, in a couple of months or so. They rely on NCSES data a lot, but they've been commissioning a bunch of studies. We've been looking at different sources of information. So I think if we could enrich that conversation more, are US folks going overseas and are we losing them? How are we losing or gaining from Canada or UK or Australia or something? And so not just the stay rates, but a broader look. And maybe we want, I'm happy to contribute if I, either as part of the board, both Maureen and I roll off our 6-year terms end, but happy to stay engaged and help in any way. But I think we should make that as rich as possible because data in that area is very hard to find, especially reliable data. So
well,
thank you.
Suresh, we will rely on you as a contributor to the review of the detailed narrative outlines as we move forward with this. But I also think, we need to start thinking creatively, and I don't want anyone to see this as a mandate, but just as a possible suggestion throwing out there that on the dashboard, any particular topic that gets published in a report, say on on STEM talent, that it be linked to other resources, to other indicators that are not in the actual published report. So that if people really want to do a deep dive on what's everything that we know about this, they would have some guidance in terms of finding additional indicators that were not highlighted. Bev?
Yeah, I am totally in favor of this idea. I completely support it. One of the things that I love the idea of the dashboards, but one of the things that was said to me that I think is critical is that people don't like change. Okay, right? They really don't like change. And one of the things that we might want to consider, and I don't know if how feasible this is, but to literally create to take the outline of the previous reports and show this is where it is in the new reports. So literally take the table of contents, and instead of having page numbers, it refers back to the content of the new report, so that those people that are so tied to the old indicators that they don't want to learn a lot can
Right.
go through that and find easily what they want.
So sort of amplifying Suresh's idea of kind of making a denser crosswalk table. You know,
Yes.
if I'm looking for this, how do I find it? Where is it? Now, with the understanding that we're not taking 3 25-page reports and
Right.
making them into one 75-page report. So not everything that was in the previous reports is going to be available in these condensed reports, but the data itself will be available on the dashboard. So there might, people, even though we don't like change, people may have to find it in a different place than they would.
I think that needs to be clear as well, to let people know, don't even look for it because it's not here.
Right.
It's in another place.
Right. Excellent thought, and an insightful one with respect to human psychology. I appreciate that, Bev. Julia.
Yeah. As you know, I think this is a good idea. But there are some huge questions out there, and also one component that we really are not talking about much at this point. In terms of the questions, I think seeing a reasonable mock-up of the data tool is going to be really important as soon as possible, because that either will give us added confidence that this is really going to work, or reveal shortcomings that we need to deal with. And because that is, we keep referring back to the data tool, but at this point, I know NCSES is working on it, and they're awesome, and I have great confidence in them. But for the rest of us, it's pretty much hypothetical at this point. And so, fleshing that out enough that we can get an idea of what that's might look like is going to be important. The other thing, and this came to mind particularly in Suresh's comments, is the importance and the need. It will become really imperative to have more of these short reports that come out at regular intervals. And international students is an obvious place to really devote some significant effort in that area, because it is such a rich topic. And while it's been well covered in the thematic reports, it's not been exhaustive. And there's a lot more to be explored there. So, we have hoped, as long as I've been involved in this committee, to have more short reports, and they keep getting eaten alive by indicators. And there is sort of a burden of proof that going to this concept is going to free up bandwidth to be able to do those. If it doesn't, then I think we've really lost a lot.
I couldn't agree more, Julia, and I particularly like the emphasis on seeing sort of broad stroke outline of the data tool. As you noted, NCSES is working on this, but I would maybe put forward as an idea for whoever ends up chair of this committee, moving forward, that maybe we put together a task force to work in collaboration with NCSES to make sure that they're getting at least some degree of input from the board early on in the design of this tool, so that it doesn't just emerge as the product of always way more work than you think it's going to take to get even to the early stages, without having received some input. So I think that might be an important thing to put together early on. Victor.
Hey, thank you, Maureen. First of all, compliments to you and Suresh again. Fantastic job, and continue on. This is really, really good. I want to just make just two comments, and one of them has to involve the thinking about the audience that we want this, and maybe expanding that audience, particularly in lieu of the trips that we've had in the past couple of months up to the Hill, talking to legislators on both sides of the aisle. And as you know, both NSF and the other agencies in Commerce, State Justice, did take a hit. And some of the things that we have heard have said, and we've offered this, is that, we need to reach out to some other expanding sectors where it can use our data. And in this case, I'm looking at the Department of Defense, because at the end of the day, it would really be very good in a couple of years from now. We have forged those relationships based on our own personal contacts, that when the appropriations come out and they can say, hey, look, if you're cutting NSF and its talent development and its areas, then you're also cutting the Department of Defense, going back to the National Defense Education Authorization Act of many, many years ago. And so I think you might want to look at that, and some ideas may be not only in national labs, but including the 15 university affiliated research centers, which are across the country. A lot of their work is not classified. They're right there in the universities. So you also not only have your natural allies in terms of the universities, but you have these big universities that also you have the Department of Defense. And that would be very, very good. The other part of that is that right now the Department of Defense pays to the national academies to do these problems that are going on in terms of legislation like the STTR, SBIR. They have to do it just to make sure that they are in compliance. The STTR, SBIR program is a $2 billion program. It's the largest program across the federal government in terms of STTR, SBIRs. And what they're looking at, to Marvy's point, is about new metrics for translation. So this might be an opportunity for NCSES to also work with them, because some of the things we used to do when I was at Hopkins, one of the UARCs is these waterfall diagrams. So you get some money, or you get a publication, or you get a piece of IP, and how does that translate down the road? And so the reason I say you might want to also do that, and I'll just finalize on the international talent, the Department of Defense has an initiative in the Global South looking at engaging more students from Africa, Latin America, and so forth. They have right now pilot programs in some of the schools where these folks are now getting clearances. They're coming in, obviously pledging fealty to the United States. But I'm saying in this whole area of moving and putting the report, speaking to a wider audience, and particularly the DOD and those Congress folks, both in the House and the Senate, and their constituents will look at that, will build us a kind of base of political support, but also support for the agency. I want to kind of paraphrase what Dan said when on one of our visits. He said, Vic, we can think of NSF down the road as staying at a $9 to $10 million sleepy agency, or as I was told him, if we expand with the Department of Defense and at the same time not losing sight of our traditional partners, now you're talking about 25 or 30 billion, particularly in regional innovation, because of some of the 10 awards. Part of the regional innovation includes the defense industrial base.
Yes, absolutely, Vic. And I think an element of what you're saying that I would just like to emphasize is that we have on the board talked for years about the fact that many of the jobs that we're aware of need to be done and are critical are bigger than we can handle. I mean, they're really jobs that span many more sectors than the NSF is directly responsible for. And so building those alliances isn't just, playing nice with others. It's actually a tool for us to accomplish these large scale national tasks that really cross many, many dimensions of our society.
Yes, it broadens our base of support.
Yep, absolutely. And our effectiveness, enables an effectiveness that we would not otherwise have. All right, well, I think we have one more item on our agenda. So I'd like to summarize, understanding that we are not taking a vote right now. I just want to state that thus far I have not heard any serious objection to bringing this in front of the full board. And so this is your opportunity, if you've been shy and have concerns and would like to slow that process down, please let's hear about it now. Otherwise, this will be something we discuss next week. From that, I'd like to hand the floor over to Julia for discussion of the draft one-pager on the skilled technical workforce for the committee's consideration. Julia?
Thanks very much, Maureen. As you all know, the talent development team has been working and actually pushing 5 different areas. The skilled technical workforce has really come to the fore because of the extreme interest in this topic with various legislation, as well as the push to onshore industries that had pretty much left the country and that sort of thing. So there's a huge interest in STW, and that kind of pushed this one to the top of the stack of the things that this team is working on. Of course, we released a report in 2019, and that continues to be referred to. STW has, since that time, become part of the indicator suite. It figures prominently now. It wasn't present at all before that. So there is kind of a lasting imprint there. And so now that indicators has been released and STW appears prominently as a topic, it seemed very timely to release an updated one-pager on the topic. Of course, there are team members working on this one-pager, particularly Vic and Kayvon. Also like to thank the NCSES colleagues and report authors. Celeste Carter is the program director for NSF's Advanced Technical Education, or ATE program. Rachel Bowser and Edward Almacy at ATE Central as well. So as usual, this one may be not quite a full country, but at least a good-sized village has been required to pull this one together. And it is in your diligent book. You will notice, if you've had a chance to review that piece that is up for your consideration today, that the recommendations in that piece echo those that were made in the 2019 STW report. They still are highly relevant. The first is to grow the U.S. skilled technical work capacity. That capacity building can occur heavily at community colleges and with significant coordinated investment, not just from the federal government, but also state and local governments, as well as the private sector that relies on these skilled technical workers and hires them or sends them back to school once they've been hired. The next second recommendation is to assess all federal investments to amplify programs that are working well. Third, develop a centralized and regularly updated repository on careers for STW workers, current and projected job openings. This is something that is highly valuable because the public at large tends not to be particularly aware of these opportunities and how good these opportunities are. And that gets to the fourth recommendation, which is to get the word out to high school and college students, to their families, and and really important also to high school career counselors, that there are significant opportunities for skilled technical workers. The communication has to include the options for anticipated career growth, salary, range information, and these sorts of things are things that kids and the counselors and their families pay attention to. And that's why the previous recommendation to generate a centralized and updated repository is so very important. So the one-pager, as you have seen in the diligent book, contains data on the skilled technical workforce from our latest round of indicators, and it includes information on the demographic composition of the STW, the sectors that they cover, all the way from healthcare to the automotive industry, next generation manufacturing, as well as cybersecurity. So a really broad range, which should attract a lot of people in this country, depending on their specific interests and proclivities. The entire board has heard from our panelists over the past 2 years about the importance of the skilled technical workforce, as well as from industry leaders and other federal agencies. And they have said pretty much with one voice that the need for skilled technical workforce, technical workers is acute, and it is growing, and it is especially important in critical and emerging technology areas where domestic STEM workers with U.S. person status, which means that they are citizens or have green cards and that have clearances. Those are particularly important and in particularly high demand. So as part of the recommendations to expand STW training and educational capacity, the one pager that you have in front of you recognizes that NSF is particularly well poised to be a leader in expanding the infrastructure, namely through its ATE program, the Advanced Technical Education Program, and the Regional Innovation Engines, or the RIE program through the new TIP Directorate. So we welcome comments from all of you on it. And the floor is open if you have, and Vic, I know you're on. I don't know if Kayvon is on. If you have anything more to say, that would be great.
Yes, we hope to get this out on time as you want. We think it's important to bring those different perspectives that you just talked about. I think the other part of that is, again, we're going to do on some of these listening tours to get some numbers, because, you know, you read these things where people say you need 100 million, you need 1 million people in cyber, you need 3 million in AI, but we don't know specifically. We want to drill down and find out where are those numbers, what's those sectors, and actually what are the salary ranges. I mean, so one of the pieces of information we just got just 2 weeks ago was that the largest employer of engineers in the country is the Department of Defense. And they had the numbers to show that. And so it gets back to some earlier comments in terms of, you know, when we write this, who are we showing this to? Because at some point, again, you know, Pontius said NSF is the talent agency. And if you cut the talent agency, we want to have people from other sectors came in and say, then you're really cutting us, particularly on defense. So that's what we're going to be looking at. And through some of these sessions that we have. So for example, we're going on a sub tour on on Friday to talk with the issues there. I'm meeting with the Undersecretary for Defense, who just got appointed for S&T and part of that, and then meeting with some people in that areas. And I think once we get some real numbers and things like that, this will not only help Christina with what she's doing, but really make this piece really broad-based, that we can get the support we have, but also it helps focuses the foundation on its investments.
Absolutely. So specifically to one pager that Julia presented, does anyone have any concerns, or is anyone wanting to ask for any emendations to the publication as proposed? Okay. So
yeah, I'm just going to say one thing. I mean, you know, what Vic said is very true. And so essentially this is sort of the opening salvo of kind of this push on STW. Not the, you know, we've done STW before, but this is sort of a new emphasis in a different way. And I do see that Bev has her hand up.
Absolutely, Bev.
And this might sound really silly, but the solar pictures on the front reminded me of the news that came out regarding California and solar energy just earlier this week, basically saying that they're trying to talk people into not getting it because it's causing problems. So I just throw that out there. When I saw the picture, I was like, oh God, solar in California. Anyway, wow. I'll shut up now.
Yeah.
No, yes, there is a pressing need for this workforce to expand. So Julia, thank you for the input, Vic and Bev. I think we are ready at this point to take a vote of the SEP committee to either approve this brief as presented. As a reminder, only SEP members may vote. So all in favor, as I said, please make sure you're unmuted. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you then. The brief is approved. Congratulations, Julia.
Really nice job.
Well, and
Excellent.
Really
thank
nice
you,
job.
Vic and Kayvon,
And yes, thank the whole
and the rest
whole
and the
village
rest
that
of the team.
contributed. Yes.
Yeah, great job. Congratulations to all contributors and huge thanks and huge thank you. Great.
Right. And I really appreciate keeping this out there as a topic of discussion and of information, because it's, as you have all pointed out, a very urgent topic. So in our last few minutes, I'd just like to close with some reflections on the past board cycle and a preview of what's to come. So over the past 2 years, we've accomplished a great deal. We've had an impactful and valuable release of the current Indicators 2024 cycle. Substantive collaboration with NCSES to envision an even stronger indicator suite for the future, and meaningful policy work on the top issues that are facing our S&E enterprise. So just a few of those policy highlights include our committee's leadership in engaging the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy on forthcoming quadrennial science and technology review, supporting the work of NSB's External Engagement Committee by providing relevant data and policy analysis for their work, establishing of 2 new policy teams to focus on STEM talent and national security concerns, whose efforts are bearing fruit, as we have seen in this meeting. And the release of NSB's latest policy brief, The Talent is Treasure, which identifies a 2-pronged strategy for the nation, as well as essential strategic elements of a robust U.S. R&D enterprise. And I'd sincerely like to thank my co-chair, Suresh Babu, for his tireless service as vice chair, and Julia and Marvi for their leadership of our committee's policy teams. It's really been, an honor and a pleasure to work with all of you. And I look forward to seeing all of the exciting and valuable developments as you move forward. I'm looking forward to the next cycle, and I'm hoping to be helpful in making the committee's work move forward on this vision for a future indicators reality that is solidly in the 20th century and more accessible and more valuable to a broader range of individuals. Any comments or discussion before we close?
Maureen, thank you very much for leading us in this SAP and taking to this all. Thank you, Maya.
You rock.
Yes, I second that. Thank you so much for your leadership, Maureen.
Thank you. Thank all of you. So with no further comments, this concludes our business for today, and I look forward to seeing you all next week. The meeting is adjourned at 1.